All right, perfect. Okay, so we're back in it. We're back in it. We're focused. We're consistent. And so, God willing, God Hashem is with us, and He hears our pleas, He hears our Torah, and He should bless us. So, okay, so we're going to continue with Rabash. Like, any ideas, any thoughts before we go forward? Any perspectives?
No, no.
Okay,
No.
okay, so you're good. Okay, so let's let's go forward. Go right into it. Just grind this out. All right, so this is very technical, so I will repeat certain things. Okay, okay, so just to leave off from where we were at yesterday. So yesterday we left off with this ideas. It says umetok she'elu gimel hagederima, right? So it says like this. Okay, so since these three principles, right? We learned about these three principles, these levels of connection, right? Just to review a little bit. Okay, so we got it, because it's things we already knew. Okay, so the thing, like, he ends this off yesterday, and he says, since the three principles are very fundamental, the reader does not, if he does not know how to be careful with them, he will take the ideas beyond their proper principle. Okay, so what he's saying is that all the words inside of the Zohar have a specific principle. And I want to also just add the point of saying, as we're critiquing how this particular manuscript is written, we have to question all the manuscripts as it relates to Torah and how they're written, right? And to be able to look at them and say, like, okay, so what is being connected to here? Not just reading the basic English or even the basic Hebrew and giving a translation into our native tongue, but understand, like, what is the Torah trying to. Now, the Torah encompasses all the levels, right? The Zohar is only focusing on explaining and connecting us to certain levels that derive from the Torah. Everything comes from the Torah, right? The Torah was given us to us by God. Okay, so there's different sages and learnings that were sprouted out, right? Like different branches and bushes and trees and flowers sprout out on the countryside, right? That, yes, all that, but the countryside itself is the Torah, right? And so one of the sproutings of that countryside is the Zohar, is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai brought down, right? But we shouldn't take it outside of that context, right? So he's saying that it's important to understand that, because this particular study, is connecting us to a certain point. So we'll just continue on. I think we're pretty clear. Okay. So this is chapter 6. He says, Ukever Yadati, Moshe Asar Sfirot. Chen. Okay, so he says like this. He says, as you already know, there are 10 sfirot that are called Chokmah, Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut. You learned that before, right? You learned that before when we talked about the 5 levels that exist inside of the different worlds, right? So he said you already know, because he said now we've already built a relationship, right? So you already know that. And he says, and their root is called Keter, right? So you know those 5 levels, Chokmah, Bina, but you know above Bina, Chokmah is Keter, right? But in this particular formulation, we know that they utilize this structure. They call it a parsuf, a particular face. But that face is a byproduct of the 10, right? So, but he says, so even if you don't hear Keter, you know everything still comes from Keter, right? You get that, right? So that's what he's saying. So, and he says like this. He says there are 10 because the spherotes of Tiferet. He says there are 10 because the sphere of Tiferet itself incorporates the 6 spherotes. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. And he says, keep this in mind whenever we state the standard formula of the 10 spherot are Chokmah, Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut. Okay, so that's a very good point. So you remember before when it said you know, in each of the worlds, there's five sphirot, right? Keter, Chochmah, Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut. So he says inside of Tiferet, there's this aspect within Tiferet that it encompasses all the other energies as well. Not saying they're not played out later, but is it saying later meaning Netzach, Hod, Yesod, right? And Malchut, right? He's saying so. He's to understand within that aspect of Tiferet, there's also this aspect of the other like say the of the six Sefirot itself, right? Meaning that Hesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod exists within of Tiferet. I know it's an interesting idea, but he's going to explain more. So he's saying when you hear that configuration, it's not saying that the other Sefirot aren't a part of it. It's just saying that the coded language that's being used means that in this level of Tiferet, right? This is Chokmah Bina Tiferet. In this level of Tiferet, all the other levels are incorporated into that. Now you can ask the question, why is all the levels in Tiferet and this? Okay, we'll get there. We'll get there. But the point is saying it's a general principle, right? Okay. He says generally they are included. Generally they are included in all the four worlds of Asilut, Bria, Yitzira, Asira, as the world of Asilut. Okay, so he says like this. So you know the four worlds: Asilut, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya. Okay, you know that. He says as the world of Asilut in the sphere of Chokmah, right? So you know Chokmah is the world of Absolute, right? The four worlds. Bria is the world of Bina, right? Yitzira, right, is the world of Tiferet, and Asiya is the world of Malchut. Now we learned that before, right? I don't know if it was so clear before, but when we talk about the four levels of desire, right, in the world, right? So we know that the world of Asiya, right, is connected to the aspect of Nefesh, right? And here is bringing in the aspect that the world of Asiya is connected to Malchut, right? In the same way that the world of of Yitzira is connected to the aspect of Tiferet, right? And in the world above that, which is Bria, is connected to the world of Bina, and the world above that is Chokmah, which is connected to Asilut, right? So he's bringing that same type of configuration. So you could add it to your when you have the four levels of the of the five levels of the Sphirot, you could add this to it as well as another column, right? So it's just you'll go back, we'll get used to it. We're going through it. Okay. So he says, in particular, not only does each and every world contain the 10 levels, the 10 Sphirot, right? So when you say Keter Chochma Bina, Hesed Gevurah Tiferet Netzach Hod and Yesod, all these 10 levels, within each of those 10 levels, so say you say the level of Malchut. Well, within the level of Malchut, although it's a part of a collective 10, within that there is a 10. So within the level of Malchut, there's also 10 levels. And then you say, well, those 10 levels that exist in the Malchut are, are Keter Chochmah Bina, Hesed Gevurah Tiferet Netzach Hod Yesod, right? But within each of those levels, in the level of Malchut, there's 10 within that level. And it goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And that's what he's trying to say. That in all the levels that there's 10, and within that 10, each of those levels, within those 10, there's individual levels, and within those individual levels, there's 10 within them, and 10 within them, and 10 within them, and it keeps going, right? Because it's infinite. So he said, as I wrote earlier in the introduction of the Zohar in chapter 43, 50, and 47. So when he says these things, you could go back and we could read it. We're not doing that today, right? Because that would be a lot of like time, right? So we could go back on it. We could do it. So it's chapter 7. So it says, Veha Mashil HaZohar Ilul HaAsar Sfirot. Okay, so it says like this. The Zohar analyzes these 10 sfirot. I know I didn't say it right, but he says they analyze these 10 sfirot. Chokhmah, Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut. He says, so this structure of Chokhmah, Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut, right? So Chokhmah Everything always includes Keter. Even though Keter is not there, it's always there because everything that's the source. But in this equation, it's not being used, right? What's being used is Chokmah, Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut. So Chokmah, as we know, even though Keter is not said, it's still receiving from Keter. So Keter, Chokmah, Bina, and then we know Tiferet encompasses Hesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Chod, and Yesod. It encompasses that. That's what Tiferet is. And then it connects to the bottom level, which is Malchut, right? So he's saying these four phases, called the five phases we have as it relates to creation, Keter, Chokmah, Bina, Tiferet, Malchut. That's how we understand the evolution of the souls, the evolutions of the tikkunim, right? Now he's saying when we're analyzing reality, he's saying like, hey, you got to learn it this way. He says we're analyzing reality, not the evolution of the human soul, but the world around us. He said understand it in four phases, right? So us, five phases, the world, four phases. So he says Chokhmah, Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut. That's the system, right? And we know Keter is there, and we know Tiferet encompasses all the other Hesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, and Netzach, Yesod. We know that's all inside of Tiferet, and Malchut is there. So Malchut is a manifestation. So he says, to this, we connect it to colors. So when you read the Torah and you hear colors, you're not reading about colors in terms of skin tone and complexions. No, you're reading about the spheros. You're reading about the different levels of energy. In the same way, we're going to learn about the body parts of Hashem, right? So woe to those other nations that come along and says, no, God was a human. He became as a human. He has body parts. And then, see, look, the Torah says it. You don't know how to learn our Torah. You don't know how to learn our Torah. You're reading it in your pagan language. And you're trying to make sense of it through your pagan intellect. But come into our world, right? Come into our world of Kedusha, and you're going to see, like, no, the Torah is not speaking in these levels. God is infinite. God is beyond our imagination. And so even the physical colors that we see out on the streets when we walk outside are connecting us to the spheros. So he says like this. The four colors. He says white is for the level of chokmah. White. Be like, hey man, she was white. Man, she was talking about the Europeans. No, they were not. Stop. Red is the concept of Bina. Red, it means now red. Aesop was ready. David Melech was ready. What's going on? But they're talking about levels. Bina, right? And he says, and for the level of green, the green is the level of Tiferet. And the black is for the level of Malchut, which is the manifestation of everything. Now we got to look at black in a new way. Wait, am I going to listen to the sages or I'm going to listen to the white people in America? I don't know. But right now I'm choosing the sages. So when we talk about the level of black, we're talking about the level of the Sphirot, where all the lights come down and they manifest everything. Everything comes to light. Everything manifests through the color black. Okay, let's keep going. I'm not going to dwell there, but you know where we're going. Okay. So this means that he says the meaning is as follows. The analogy for the concept. So here's an analogy to explain these four colors. He says, for this concept is a window with four panes of colors in these four colors, such through the light passes by. So you see these, like, I think it's very popular in Europe. I don't know. But they have these big windows, and these windows have different shades of colors in them. And so as that light comes through those shades of color, it manifests itself differently, right? Because it's like sunglasses, right? You have dark sunglasses, you have lighter sunglasses, you have all these different types of sunglasses, and it allows the light to reflect what our eyes in different ways. So he's saying, understand that these colors are there as an expression of the vessels that light manifests itself, right? Because we learned earlier that the Zohar it only deals with the substance and the form of the substance, but not the abstract substance and not the essence. So it doesn't deal with the internal aspects, it's just dealing with the light, right? And so that light that comes down also expresses itself in shades of color, right? Just like a kaleidoscope, right? As you twist it and it reflects the different light that's around, you're going to receive different shades of that light. So those different frames of that light are used to express different levels of the spherot, of God's manifestation of light. You understand? So these things are two things that are totally connected, right? And so sometimes when people hear about colors and they read colors, like the non-Jews, they read colors of, oh, and God is going to make you like this, and God made Ham's descendants like this. They're reading it and they're like, hey, this represents oppression, right? No, we're talking about spiro. Please stop. Stop abusing our Torah. So he says like this. So four panes of light were the colors which they go that although the light passes through is one color, when the light passes through the panes, it becomes colors and turns into four colors of light: white, red, yellow, and black. Likewise, the light of all the spheros is simply divided in unity from the beginning of Asilut to the end of the end of Asiyah. So he says that the reason for the division into 10, Chokhmah, Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut, is due to the fact that the vessels are called Chokhmah, Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut. Okay, so let's go there because we're flying now. Okay, so he's saying like this. So he's saying that the different worlds, right?
Hold on, Rabbi.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Hey, I see that there's it says it added yellow light to it.
Where do you see the yellow light? Oh
So
yeah,
it
yeah,
says
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Let me look at this.
maybe it changed from green to yellow.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, so you're saying there's a green and yellow dynamic connected to Tiferet, right? So that's a good point out. Very
Yeah.
good. That was a good catch. Yeah, very good. Okay, so we have this dynamic, right? So when we're talking about colors, each vessel is refined in what is it, the partition, right? Is refined, right? So he says, though which the divine light passes through in it passes through to the recipients. He says, therefore, each vessel is considered as turning the light into a different color. Okay, so as we learned, if you remember before, the light is always the same. The vessel is what expresses the light at different levels, right? And so he's saying that there's different levels that he says right now we're going to understand the level of 10 through the frame of Hokmah, Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut, right? And he says the reason why, he says because Tiferet, he says Keter, which we would normally incorporate in the 10 is already there. We know that that's the case. And he's saying that the aspect of the other 10, of the other, and you have Bina, right? And then he says, and you have Tiferet. He says Tiferet encompasses the six, and then you have Dimahut to 10. He says, but these also are connected and coalesced to colors, right? And these colors are Hokmah is Hokmah is white, and um, Bina is saying here Bina is red, right? And yellow, or it could be yellow or green, which I even heard purple before for Tiferet. That is that's for Tiferet, which encompasses the six, and then Malchut is black, right? And I'm just saying, as a person who grew up with this dynamic of being called black, well, maybe God chose that to express my spiritual potential, because we know all the colors of humanity come from the dark melanation that was labeled black, at least in America, right? And it spread around the world. But that dynamic, right? And so now we're seeing that match perfectly with the 10th sphera. Okay. So he says each vessel is like a refined partition. Okay. He said, thus the vessel of Hokmah in the world of Absolute transport white, meaning colorless. So for when the Torah is referring to white, it's referring to colorless, right? So when we learn that Moshe takes his hand out of his jacket and he said his hand was white, right? Well, we can also understand that that could mean colorless, like maybe his hand was like almost like see-through, right? Maybe we limiting it by saying, oh man, his hand was white. That proved he black. That proved he was black, but maybe his hand was completely see-through, right? Maybe it was at that level where he pulled it out and he's like, whoa, my goodness, like my hand is like, you know, three-dimensional, right? He says, okay, so meaning colorless, light, since the vessel of absolute is light, the light itself, right? So it's so close to the light, it doesn't manifest into color. So when we're saying white, we're not speaking of white as in chalk, right? On the chalkboard, we're saying white in terms of colorless, right? And so he says, in light, and he says, since the vessel of absolute is like the light itself, and the divine light does not go under any changes on the account of absolute, then it passes through it. This is the mystical meaning of the statement of the Zohar, right? And he says, what is this? He's concerning the world of absolute, and he says that he is the light force, and his attributes are one. Explained below. According to the light of absolute, is considered the white light. This is not the case for the vessel of the world of Bria and Yitzira and Asiya that I mean in Asiya is where the lights already received on the account on their account a certain change in dullness. When it passes through them to the recipient, that is the red light, represents Bina, which is okay, so okay, it's getting technical. Okay, just follow this. Okay, so it's saying like this. Let's go back a little bit. Well, this is long. I didn't realize the long was. Okay, so it's saying like this. Okay, so let's work through this. Okay, so basically what it's doing is explaining the concept of this world of absolute and how this world of absolute is like, how would you explain the world of absolute, right? You explain the world of absolute like from this standpoint. So a person, a person walks into a room, or like I remember there was this restaurant in Los Angeles, and it was called what was it called? I don't know. It was like something I can't even think of the name of it, but it was like connected to like a very high end clothing. So they had a restaurant and they had a clothing store inside of it. I can't think of the name of it. But anyway, so I used to go there, and the thing about it, when we're waiting to get our seat, because you had to, wait for them to seat you, we would see they will open the door and it'll be this wave of colognes and perfume because everyone's, they're all wearing their perfumes or colognes, the whole thing, but you get a wave of it. And it's just like this initial wave. And it's just, wow. Yeah, you're like, it's always, I don't know, for me, and maybe I have sensitive smell being a Virgo, but it just was always a thing by me, right? So the world of absolute is the first expression of God's light, right? And so that first expression of God's light does not have any definition. It's just pure light. So that's why they're calling it white, because it doesn't have any color. Now, when it goes down to the world of Bria, that's the world of creation. That's when that light starts to express itself. So here they're using the letter red or the color red, right? And then when it gets down to the world of Yitzira, they have this idea of green, this idea of yellow, right? And in the world of Asia, the world that we're in, the world is black. I'm not going to take it there. Anyways, so the point is saying, so that's what he's explaining to us right now, right? So after you smell that first whiff of perfume, you're outside the restaurant. So you just smell the perfume. It's just purely the perfume. But once you walk into the restroom, you see differentiation, right? You see people sitting, you see the different people, this, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so that goes into this now world of definitions. And that's why they're using the dynamic to start that process is red. right? And by the time you sit down at your seat, you are in a different place within that collective definitions. And that would be the dynamic of say Yitzira, right? Which is the level of green, of yellow, this type of thing. And then, in actualizing, maybe eating or whatnot would be the malchut, right? The manifestation, right? So the point is saying, so there's different stages of smelling this initial smell that's undifferentiated, going in, seeing the differentiation, sitting down, and then eating, right? So it's like the same, these are the way that maybe a way to understand the world, right? So it's like this. So, according to the light of Yitzira, like that top level, it's considered white light. This is not the case for the other worlds of Bria, Yitzira, and Asya, where the light is already received on their account in a certain change in dullness. When it passes through them to the recipient, that is, the red represents Bina, which is Bria. The yellow represents represents the light of the sun, for it is Teferet, which is the world of Yitzhak, and the black represents the Malchut, which is the world of Asya. So you got that. We got it. Yay, hooray, we got it. Okay, so now he's going to go into the idea of the difference between this idea of the world of Asilut, right? This world that is pure light, and then this other world that are these other worlds of expression, right? Bria, Yitzir, Asya, right? So we're getting this under that. So he says Umal Red, Maha Omer. Yishtam Beha Mishkila Hazeh Shel Dalet Hasavaim. So he says, in addition to the above, this metaphor of four colors includes a particular important illusion. Okay, what is this important this illusion? For the supernal lights are called Sefer, book, as it is written in the Sefer Yitzira, right? Which is the whole thing with, okay. Chapter 1, it says, he created the world with three books, a book a book, an author, and a story. It is also written, the heavens shall be rolled together as a book. Now, the manifestation of the wisdom in each book is not in the white background of the pages. But it contains, but only in the colors of the ink, from the letters of the book to the combinations of the letters according to the wisdom come to the reader. In general, there are three kinds of inks in a book: red, green, and black. Okay, so he's saying that there's the white background, right? He's giving us this way to understand the relationship between Asilut, which is pure light, and the other lights of Bina, Yitzira, and Asiya, which is translated is as in Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut. He says he wants us to understand this. She says when you see a Torah scroll, right, and you see the whole white background, that is the world of Absolute. It encompasses everything. But when you see the colors of that ink and those letters carved out, that's the manifestation of that light, right? That is the manifestation of that light. The background is the light itself, but you need vessels to manifest that light. This is how the beginning of creation was, right? Hashem says, I want to bestow my benevolence. This is the world of Asiya. But it's only through the world of Bria that things became in the frame of manifestation. And they're comparing that to the aspect of the parchment that's all white and the letters of the ink, which could be in the letter red, green, or black. Mostly you see black. And they're bringing this idea of the Sefer, the idea of the book, right? The idea of the book being an expression of that. So when we want to understand this idea of these four colors, right? And the idea of white and these other colors, he says, no, you understand it through the frame of the Sefer, which is the Sefer, the book. The book has what? Pages that are white, which is what? Colorless, right? And then colorless is manifested on top by what? By colors, by shapes that are what? Expressed in colors. And he's saying this is the relationship of that, of Sefer. right? This is high level, no? So he says, Kemo kin olam ha'asilot hahu sidur chokhmah. So he says, similarly, the world of Absolute, which is the mystical meaning of Chokmah, okay, Absolute and Chokmah were together, which is entirely divinity and comparable to the white in the book, in a book. He says, that is, we have no grasp of it whatsoever. Rather, the entire manifestation of the book of the heavens is in the spherot of Binah. Okay, so the manifestation of the light is in the frame of Binah. Tiferet and Malchut. So he's saying that, yes, the light force of Hashem is coming down. We understand that through the word of Absolute. But the manifestation of God's will and God's wisdom and all these things come down in this frame of Bina, Tiferet, and Asiya. And we see that all these different levels of manifestation have different colors. The lowest of the colors, or you could say the highest of the colors, right? Because they all manifest in Malchut, is black. So that's why the parchment looks the way that it does. It's teaching us a principle about how the light manifests in this world. So now when you open the Torah and you see these pages, you say, whoa, this white pages is the world of Absolute. And these letters that are written in black are the world of Asiya. Wow, just by the physical manifestation of the pages, you're seeing the manifestation of light and vessel. The world of light, the world of manifestation. The world of manifestation is a vessel. Malchut is a vessel. And so he says, for they are considered the ink of the book of the heavens. And those letters and combinations are manifested through the three aforementioned types of ink. And it is only through them that the divine light is revealed to the recipients. He says, "V'chad imam ze sheyesh eleha ve'chaveron kemo shekha ben shekha sefer hu ikar le'leni." Okay, so he says like this. He says, at this time, it must be noted, right? So he's telling us to pause. That just as the white in the book is primarily the medium of the book, while the letters are the born, right? Upon which the white in the book. And were not for the white, if it were not for the white, there would be no possibility of existence for the letters. And all the manifestation of the wisdoms are contained. So too, the world of Asilut is in the world of is in the sphere of Chokmah, and it is primary bearers of the revelation of Chokmah, which is revealed through the world of Bria, Asya, Asira, and Asya. This is the meaning of the verse, "In the wisdom Chokmah you have made them all." Okay, I mean, it's pretty much what we were just talking about, right? Is to be able to relook at the Sefer and to see the white pages and understand them as a frame of Absolute and the frame of Malchut, right? And being able to see that the world in Malchut, in order for Malchut to manifest, it has to go through Bria, has to go through Tiferet, right? And then it manifests. So all the levels are manifest. Okay, so let's go here. So it says Vehu she'amerenu ale, he says le'il. He says begir chag. Okay, so it says like this. He says this is the meaning of the statement above regarding the second principle, that the Zohar does not speak in the world of Absolute itself. This is because Absolute is the white of the book. Rather, the Zohar refers to Absolute in accordance with the illumination into the three worlds, of Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya, since they are considered the ink, the letters, and their combinations in the book. So this is so in one of two ways. One way is the three worlds of Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya receive the illumination of the world of Absolute in their own place. This is the case of the light is greatly diminished for them as it passes through the diaphragm. Okay, so this before we get lost. Okay, so he's saying like this. So he's saying, why does the Zohar not speak in the frame of Absolute or say he didn't mention it, but the endless world? He's saying because the Absolute itself is part of the manifestation of the book. That light of the endless light encompasses everything. So when you look at the page in the Torah, the page in the Torah is reminding you that everything is encompassed by Hashem. Everything. That's why it's there. Or the parchment and the Torah scroll. Everything is an expression of Hashem, all things, right? So it doesn't have to speak on it because it's in your face all the time. He says, rather, the Zohar refers to Absolute in accordance to the elimination of the worlds, Bria, Yitzhira, Asiya. So it's only from that frame. It doesn't go into that world. It's just expressing that, since they are considered the ink. So the ink itself is only manifesting or different manifestation of God's light. The letters and their combinations in the book, so since this is so in one of two ways. One way is that the three worlds of Bria, Yitzhira, Asiya receive from the illumination of Asilut, which we established, in their own place. In this case, the light is greatly diminished for them as it passes through one diaphragm that is below the world of Asilut. So you see, the light goes at a lower dimension as it's passed down, right? Until the light is considered considered merely an illumination from the vessel of Absolute. Alternatively, it occurs through the ascent of the world of Bria, Yitzhira, and Asiya above the diaphragm to the place of the spherot of Bina, Tiferet, Malchut of Asiya. Okay, so let's go here. So it says, okay, so the light itself is considered merely an illumination of the vessel of Asiya. So Asiya comes down, and it comes to these different levels of refinement, right? So so a way to understand this, how do we understand this pure light going through different stages, right? So I remember before you were mentioning about your wife, she makes the soup for Shabbat and she goes through a process. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm hearing wrong. Maybe it was like several hours, night. I don't know how many hours it was, but it's a process that she goes through to get to soup to a different level, right? Now, I can't tell you because I've never tasted the soup. Maybe God willing, one day I will. But the point is just saying like that. There's different stages in that soup, right? In terms of its manifestation. So let's say that this breaks that manifestation into that soup into three different phases, right? Those three different phases of that manifestation of that soup into its at its perfected state are a byproduct of her thinking, right? Her thinking is a frame of absolute. The thinking and the action is in a frame of absolute. The process of that thinking and that manifestation is expressed inside of the soup that goes through three different phases in order for eat. They're separate entities, but they're connected. That's the idea, right? So he says alternatively, it occurs that through the ascent of the world of Bria, Yitzhira, and Asiya, from the diaphragm, the place of the spheros, being a Tiferet Malchut of Asilut, of that first level, and Bria and Yitzhira are found enclosed in the world of Asilut. So even that world of Asilut, has four levels, right? He says, in this case, the lower worlds receive the lights in the place of the illumination. Okay, so there's another sefer he's drawing from. Okay. Amnam ein amaskila madome legere. So he says like this. However, the metaphor does not correspond precisely to the issue at hand. He says, since in the book of wisdom it is in this world, both white and the ink in the letters are lifeless. The manifestation of wisdom on their account does not occur in their essence itself, but outside of them, in the mind of the reader. So we're supposed to see these things. Obviously, we're not worshiping a book. This book is a connection to the light in the vessel of this book. No, God forbid. It's just paper. It has no value. It's lifeless. But we can see the systems of the book itself. We can see the system of the letters. We can see the system of the Tintra. We can see the system of this. And we, in these letters and this system allows us to take our mind into a new place, into a higher place. You understand? In this higher place, in this higher place, we're able to advance into these higher frames of consciousness, right? Just in the same way that a plane has a runway, right? The plane has a runway, and the runway allows you to build enough momentum for you to blast off. So the letters and the pages and the letters and the words and the ink and all this whole structure that we're learning is just merely a means to understand why you're learning this, where to have your mind, right? Where to have your mind. So we'll stop at this place and we'll learn a little bit more. I just want to get some thoughts. Thoughts, reflections. We went very
Well,
high on
okay. I like the analogy about the soup, and but what I was thinking about was, across my mind. I like the example also about the scroll and the letters. But now I do have a question. Are we to think about the paper and then the ink? Do we think about it like you have uh, uh, full verses written in red, or are we looking at, let's just use just the letter Aleph, okay? So if the Aleph is beginning to be written, okay, but its first is written in red ink, which would be Bina, yeah, Bina, and then on top of that red ink, we can kind of see that it's an Aleph. We see it, but then now the writer or the scribe takes green ink to make that red a little bit darker over that Aleph, and then he writes it. Then he takes it and he takes black ink and he fills it in to where it's let me to whereas the it's like overlaid. It's like overlaid to make it more defined. And each level is significant to how we understand the
I can't hear
how
you.
we understand. Oh, you can't. Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
It
Oh,
could be easier if you take off the video, maybe.
let me see. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you great now.
Okay, so can we look at it from that standpoint that each level represents a different way of viewing and understanding Hashem's word, like with just understanding like the different levels of
Exactly.
instead of just the ink being like, there's an olive here that's written in red, and then the whole text is written in red, and then the next page is written in black, but rather it's all overlaid. The letters are overlaid together to make it more defined. And but understand that there is three levels to this, that it has levels to it. Is that how we're supposed to look at this?
Yeah, exactly. And I think a way to understand it when I was listening to you, I was thinking like, you know what? So, like, say if you took crayons, right? And you took crayons and you wrote a letter Aleph, right? And the first Aleph you wrote was on a parchment, right? Was all in white, right? But the first Aleph you wrote was the first Aleph you wrote down on a parchment that's all in white was with say a white crayon. And then on top of that Aleph, you said, I'm gonna trace on top of it, or I'm gonna color it on top of it. I'm gonna color a red on top of that. And then if you color it on top of that, you'll say, hey, I like the red and the white, but I'm gonna color on top of that, and I'm gonna color it green, or maybe a greenish yellow. right? And then on top of that, you colored it black, right? But all of those colors that it represents that light or that energy coming down into this world and manifesting itself as a letter in black, right? What we get is the saying that, yeah, the black of the letter is showing us that there was a process for that letter to become into our physical reality, which means the letter itself does not originate in our physical reality. In fact, it originates in a place higher than our reality, but it's only manifesting itself in our consciousness through the spherot of Malchut, which allows us to see this letter, which is the manifestation of this world of Absolute. We could experience this manifestation of this light through this parchment and this letter.
And thus, and even when when you see the color black, it almost, well, not almost, but it conceals the fact that there's other levels underneath that. And
Yep.
you can't deny the fact that no, when you see this black letter, you see the average person would see that black letter, but if you were not in there with the scribe, you would never know that there's uh, basically three pillars underneath that are significant. That they had a uniqueness, that they have a uniqueness, because they are there. It's just that when you look at it on the surface, it just looks black. So, oh no, that's a black letter. Yeah, but that black letter has three different levels to it, and the only way that you can truly get to the pure light, which is the white page, the back to the white page, that you got to go through those different levels. You have to understand three levels to this. There's four levels to this.
Yeah, no, you're right on it. Okay, so on that point, yeah, I like to lighten it up a little bit because these are very big concepts, are very, big parts of like new reality, new things. So we got to lighten it up a little bit. Hey, what better way to lighten up things than to talk about marriage, right? And not only about marriage, Rabbi Nachman, right? So what does Rabbi Nachman have to say about marriage? We're going to see. It's not very long, but it allows us to close off, on a upper note and build into tomorrow. Which tomorrow we're going to go. We're going to continue on, and Otinel should join us. Maybe his wife. They're working, they have schedules, so who knows. But we're going to continue on the Rav Ashlag because I kind of brought him up to speed a little bit. He didn't go as deep as we did, but he could definitely join in. So we're going to continue Rav Ashlag tomorrow, but that's see what Rabbi Nachman has to say about marriage, and even if it doesn't apply, it's a tool to help other people, right? Okay, so it says like this. It says tikkun al yedei tefillah bechocha zochei lezigur. Okay, so he says, okay, so marriage. All right, he's starting with marriage. All right, we're gonna see what happens. He says intense prayer can help a person find his marriage partner. Okay, so it sounds like we're already going in the direction of like single people, right? Al Yadei Rikudin Shel Hatunan Lematikin Hadinin. So he says, dancing at a wedding sweetens the force of harsh judgment in the world. Okay, so he's going over particular points. He says, "Ma shekala sheolachat talit lehakatan." Okay, so he says there is a deep Kabbalistic reason for the custom that the bride sends the groom a talit. So when people get married, the bride sends a talit to the husband. It's a custom. It's not like a thing, but it's a custom. He says, and for the crying out Shabbat and making humorous remarks at the wedding celebration. Okay. He says there's also a deep significance in the other wedding customs, like covering the bride and pelting the groom with baked goods, interrupting the groom's Torah discourse, and giving him a gift for his discourse, and consume in the, he says discourse the custom of entertainers, beheading themselves, themselves over double. Bending themselves over double. Okay, so he's talking about the wedding process, this, what's going on. We don't know, but he's talking about it. He said there's an awesome reason for all these things that happen expressing goodwill. Okay. Al yedei halal aleho da'al leha shema yitavarek. Veya al yedei limud ha'kulot. So he says, and when we acknowledge good and give him praise, it is an influence which helps those who need to find a marriage partner to do so. And the same is true for when we study the legal codes. So I remember when I was in yeshiva, there was two main masectas of the Talmud of the Gemara that we would learn. One was Gittin, and Gittin is all about, God forbid a person get, the relationship doesn't work, and he gives the marriage document or ending the marriage. So we learned that, and then after that we learned Kedushin, on how to get married. So he said learning that is a way for a guy. So a guy who's looking to get married, learn the Torah around marriage, right? Learn about the laws of marriage, learn about how the system works, and you will create a vibration of marriage. You will attract it, laws of affinity. So it's al yedei pagam habarit kasher le'letzoda zi vugo. So he says immorality and abuse of the covenant. He says immorality and abuse of the covenant makes it hard for a person to find a true marriage partner. So if you're going out there and you're doing that dark stuff in secret, you're pushing your soulmate away. That's just the bottom line. So he says the tikkun is by the following spiritual path explained by the Kabbalists, writing about themes of the month of Elul. Okay. So it says like this. It says, "Min she'eno leyechola lemitzo et zevugo zivug." It says, but it says zevugo, but it's zivug. Okay. So he says when a person is unable to find his marriage partner, it can help. It can help if he goes to hear the original teachings from a man of deep wisdom. So obviously, these are all things that people like yourself, when you come into contact with these married couples or single people, when you guys with your experience and a person is trying to get married, you can say, "Hey, Rabbi Nachman says you have to go out. You go, go and learn the specific Torah about marriage, learn about kiddushin, learn about get, learn about the mechanisms, read books about modesty and preserving yourself, and stay away from sin. These types of things. Stay inside of the Torah, right? That's the idea." So it says, "Baze shemea barin kali chaser zebe sha'at hashiduk." Okay, so he says, and the reason for breaking the piece of hardware at a marriage ceremony. You ever see people step on the glass? It is a reminder that it reminds the groom of Gehenna in order to prevent him from getting trapped by his desires. He must sanctify himself in the marriage relationship, and is also a hint to him that if his wife turns out to be a bad woman, he should not he should still not mistreat her, or he should not mistreat her or divorce. Because of her, he should never see hell. One should never see to it that he never comes to the point of divorce. And he says the subject of breaking a piece of hardware at the wedding is also, it's also okay. Also says, all right, whatever. All right, young guys looking for spirituality, and they get in that mindset. They're looking for marriage, they're looking for the right partner. Here's some of the techniques. Any thoughts, ideas, reflections?
Yeah, just thinking back, before I met my wife, before Hashem sent me my wife, there was a time frame that of purification. There was a real time frame of purification, leaving the world that I had, that I had basically created for myself, and just, that just leaving that world, uh, coming out of that darkness. And when I got serious about it, when I really got serious about it, um, I looked and I said, you know what? I want, this is what I want. I first I had to define what I wanted, what was right, and I said, you know what? No more immorality. And it was 5 years later, just no immorality, uh, that I was able to marry my wife. And that was a blessing. And so much so to whereas the the night the night before we were married, before our wedding, my buddies, they wanted to like oh, let's see here. I just want to have mics on. Can you hear me now?
You can take the camera.
Oh, let me see. Let's see here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. It was such a blessing, and I'm so glad that I had those 5 years to really purify myself. Because the day before our wedding, that evening, a lot of my buddies wanted to treat me out to dinner. Okay. And when we get to the so-called restaurant, it wasn't a restaurant at all, and I could see it from outside. And I told a good friend of mine, I said, man, I'm not going in there. And they were like, well, man, why not? Why, man? Come on, man, come on. This is your last. And I said, no, I don't. No, I'm not going in there. That's not my life. And so two of them got out the car, and all the rest of them was already inside of the building. They got in, and they said, man, you're not coming in. It's like, man, you're gonna come in. So I sat in the car. I sat in the car, and then all of a sudden, one of the guys came back, and he got in the car. He said, man, you really not gonna come in? I said, no, I'm not doing that, man. I'm not coming in. And he said, why? And I said, man, because I said, man, I chose to live a holy life, man. And buddy mine came out. He came out and he was like, man, I can't believe you're not coming in. And I said, man, I'm a changed man. And we left, and I was able to minister to the guy I did not know, because he was so impressed that I didn't go in. He was actually, him and his wife had got into an argument. And they were going through marital problems. And he was just trying to go out with the boys, go out, night out on the town. And we stayed up the whole night just ministering, and I'm so grateful because it helped his marriage. He went home. He went home, and I was racing home trying to get back to be on time for our wedding. And so it was a blessing. It really was. So that time frame, that part about immorality, focusing on that area, really focusing on that area, because that will benefit anyone that's searching for a wife right now, that's desiring a wife, a spouse. And for the daughters, purify yourself. Just take that time, purify yourself. You want to say anything?
Just intense prayer. I like the fact that he said intense prayer. That was one of the main things, because before I met my husband, I was potentially going to be married to the wrong person. And I just prayed and cried out to Hashem. And he directed me to go on a extended fast, and it was just a long fast, 7 days, long for me. And during that time of prayer, I literally saw, it was about the third day, all kinds of things began to happen, and you're being purged. All of the things that are on the inside that you don't even know are there begin to be purged. And I literally saw this person, and I knew that what I was seeing was not what Hashem had for me, and that there was something behind, something coming. And so, I called that relationship off. And so it just, intense prayer is so important, and just seeking Hashem is so important. And like you said, um, reading books that our sages have written, and connecting with those who have wisdom. And when you connect with those who have wisdom, they're going to be able to share with you from a place of wisdom. It's not going to be from a place that's shallow and that's filled with, a lot of them. It's just going to be from a place of Hashem, and it will be. I think is a Proverbs or a Psalm that said it's going to be like beautiful apples, at a fitted word at an appropriate time, and it's going to be able to revive you so that you can hold on and, keep the Amunai to wait patiently for the person who is Hashem has destined for you. But on the note, like my husband saying, purifying yourself and making that righteous decision to say, I'm going to be, pure, and wait for that person. Even if you, had prior, mistakes in your life, Hashem he's faithful to help you to get through that purification stage that we all have to go through.
And that was an old saying. That was a saying elder shared with me long time ago. And that elder, he told me, he said, when you pray and you ask God for a wife, he said, at that moment, leave that prayer in his hands. And he said, and busy yourself with his business. And he said, when you busy yourself with his business, he said, you'll be so wrapped up in his business that the wife that he has for you is going to already be on that road, going in that same direction, and y'all are just going to meet, because she's also going to be about his business, and it was just if we have time, just a really quick testimony about that, and maybe this can encourage somebody. I remember our first date that we went on. We went and just got some breakfast, and when we were sitting down and we were just talking, getting to know each other, and as we're talking, this man walks up and he like throws himself at the window. He's banging on the window where we eating at, right there, and he's intoxicated. He's just going through a lot. His pants was falling down, and he was in a bad situation. And so I got up and I began to, help the man pray, just pray for him. And I gave him my belt, and we tried to give him some money, but he wouldn't take the money. And my wife at the time, she came outside and she started praying for the man, and we just kind of counseled him, and I gave him a ride home. But the whole time he was, he kept saying, I want to thank you and your wife. I want to thank you and your wife. Just thank you and your wife for just helping me. And I was like, man, it's not my wife, she's not my, it's just a sister from the church, and but she understood we had to cut the date short. She understood, no problem. She said, no, go ahead on, and this is ministry work, and and she left, and everything was fine, but what if we were not on the same path, You know, it would have been just, you're like, why you gave him your belt? Why, what we haven't done it. He needs to go on about, but it's because we were on the same path. We had the same vision, the same goal about what we wanted to do in life. And so, and the story goes a little bit further than that, but all Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem.
Well, a very inspirational stories for me, and I'm sure anybody else who hears this is definitely inspired by this. And you guys are teachers, and God willing, we'll continue to just go on this journey, and I can help as much as possible to give all the tools so you guys can empower so many couples and families and people. And that's the whole point of this, right? Is to get people to sit down with them and to learn the inner aspects of the Torah, right? And as we build the inner aspects of the Torah, we build the inner aspect. We manifest the inner aspect of Israel in the world, and as we manifest the aspect of Israel, the other nations will be subdued. Our personal Yitzhar Hara, our evil inclination as a community will be subdued, and as individuals will be subdued. We put ourselves in position to manifest the goal of creation, right? And so that's the mission that we're on. And it's about how many people can we touch, right? How many, people can we help go on their journey, not our journey, but for people to go on their journey and to be supportive to that manifestation, because that's honoring God. And we know that the key to honoring for people on the journey is to learn the inner aspects of the Torah, right? The inner aspects, the in depth, the reasonings, the depth, and that allows the inner self to go. Well, what is the inner self? Uniqueness, right? And ultimately, we want a world that understands that they're all unique, all from God, right? And when we understand that, people, it's very difficult to manipulate people who are into their uniqueness, right? That are doing their own journey, their own path. So we want to get rid of war. We want to get rid of famine. We want to get rid of disease. We want to deal with, just any inequities that exist in the world, any pain and suffering. We want to reduce it from the world. We want to remove it from the world. And so the work that we're doing spiritually is for that reason. So we're going to keep building, and you guys are going to have the skills, and then you guys will be able to teach the safers, the sparring from the tradition, not from the ego and not from personal agenda, but just passing on the tradition. So anyway, so we'll continue tomorrow with Rob Ashlag. We'll keep building, but it's so important to have other people in mind when we're learning. When we're learning this great wisdom, we have to think about and have a certain sense of sadness of all the people that don't have this wisdom, right? And whose lives would be much better if they just had a little bit of this, right? And so that sense of sadness is going to allow us to connect to God on a much higher level, right? And it allows us to be humble, allows us to stay in a place of appreciation. And we have to think about others, right? We have to think about others. We have to think about what they're lacking, and the fact that God put us in this position, that God is going to judge us differently. After 120, we stand in front of God. He can say, why didn't you teach those people? All the different chaos and the things you could have stopped in your neighborhood, in your community, your people around you, friends and family. Why didn't you do that? Why were you using wisdom just for yourself? I'm not going out like that. So we got to get this thing out to as many people, probably millions upon millions of people, because we have the capacity to do it. So that's the spirit of the learning and the teaching, and us, doing our siyum. But we got to finish this other, and then I think once we finish this, then we could start learning the Zohar per the weekly Torah portion, right? So then we'll be able to go and learn the basic understanding of the verse. We'll be able to understand the level of rimis, which is like hints that are in the verse, like different moral teachings, ideas, musar. And then we'll be able to go to a higher level, which is drash, which is bringing meaning, and then all to the level of sod. So we'll be able to reach all four levels of the Torah, thus dealing with all those four parts of all of the different worlds in our soul, right? So all those different levels of Torah, the basic level, the hints, the drash, and the sod, those are all touching the different levels of our existence as human beings, and we'll be able to uproot those, and thus completing the purpose of why we were created. Anyways, we'll continue tomorrow, God willing. We'll be saying probably 15:30. Let's call it for 15:30 tomorrow, Jerusalem time, and we'll go there, and we'll continue tomorrow. Baruch atah Adonai leolam, amen ve'amen.
Hey.